to Shaken and Disturbed, everybody. We
Everybody.
are starting off so solid. This is Daryn Carp here with John Thrasher.
I'm a
Thank you for joining us
mess.
on Shaken and Disturbed. John is a mess. I have a cold. John has dribbled all over her shirt. We're on video. I don't know if you knew we were on video, John. Yep, right there. There it is. There it is. We're
I'm
basically
pointing to it.
drunk. I'm like been blowing my nose. I've been doing this. John has the hiccups.
I
So
now
it's like
just got the hiccups and I'm like, what is literally hear that? I can't even
toss
get
it
through a
up.
thought. Yeah.
Toss it up to the podcast gods, people, because obviously all of this was going to go down when we finally are announcing our big
I
announcement.
know. What the hell?
We have updated. Wee, wee, wee. This is part of our like
Here it
soundboard
is.
that I
Yeah.
want to. Wee, wee, wee. Patreon. We've updated our Patreon perks and they are better than ever.
Yay.
Now, we had previously done live streams every few months. Now you can join us every single week while
Oh
we're
my
recording the
God.
episode, which is super fun. This is called VIP live recordings, and they're available for both the Radish and Sussy Radish tiers. We'll shout you out during the recording. We're going to take questions, run fun and hilarious polls. We always have that. John's going to
Yeah.
promise to only get the hiccups every other record.
So annoying.
And essentially, you get to be part of the show, which is what we kind of always wanted. Our first episode with invited patrons will be very soon. So sign up now for that. We're going to be reminding you on social media, but start
Yeah.
signing up now. We want people to sign up before we actually launch this. So please sign up and we'll announce and share when the first session is going to be. But we're really excited.
We're so excited. I just can't wait to have people in our live streams. And by the way,
Your hiccups can't wait
there's a
either.
hiccup.
I mean, they're ready.
They're ready to jump
pop
right out of my mouth here. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
To have some of you guys in our live recording is just going to be so fun. I can't believe this is happening while we're recording.
There's like literally no better thing that could have happened to us.
Great. Wonderful.
This is so us.
Yeah, it's so us, you guys. Oh my God. By the way, Daryn, you should be yelling at me about getting the hiccup straw. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah,
I wanted to share. I wanted to
scare
share
me.
you. I want to
That
share.
didn't
Yes,
work.
there was a Shark Tank idea years ago. I think it was years ago, but a hiccup straw because of like the flap on the esophagus. It basically is off kilter.
Excuse me?
That's why you get babe your flap.
Excuse me. Don't talk about my
That's why
flap like that.
That's why you get hiccups. And
Yeah.
I was like, John, get this straw because it teaches you to like swallow water at a pace that you're whatever goes into a normal pace. Anyway, John
Oh.
was like, yeah, get it. And of course he didn't.
I
And now
never
look.
did, and now I need it
And
really
now look.
badly. Oops.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm
I'm
really
getting to you more.
excited. Yeah, thank you. We're really excited about that Patreon perk.
Are we?
I'm trying to be as much as I can. We're also really excited because on Patreon, we're going to be releasing the audio and the video versions of our Sunday
Wow.
episode 2 days early. I'm a mess.
We're
you
fan.
guys.
No, we're drunk.
2 days early. So you get to start your weekends with us every single Friday, and you'll get to know what everyone is listening to before anyone else. And you'll even get to see us earlier than anyone else. That's exclusively for Patreon, for Radish and Sussy
So you're gonna get to see the hiccups like as
Oh my
they're
God,
happening. This is not
yes.
just a pre-record. In fact, last week, John, you had a
What?
bad hair day and you wore a hat, and I was lucky enough to see the
That's right.
Johnny Bravo, Conan O'Brien-ness of it all. So
That's right. But
that's a
not
perk.
everybody did. That's a perk in and of itself. These hiccups are a perk.
Those are a perk.
Will I be wearing that? Oh my God, that one was really bad. Will I be wearing a hat, or will Daryn be drinking Diet Coke? You'll know first. What are you drinking today?
Celsius.
I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, all of this plus lots of other stuff. Go check out which tier is best for you at patreon.com/shaken and disturbed, or click the link in our show notes that we always have. But again, that's patreon.com/shaken and disturbed to sign up.
And now the second announcement, which has been kept under. There you go. Daryn has a special.
Oh,
let me do a couple of these.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Do a couple of that.
That's right. The big announcement, the second announcement that we've been working on that includes hiccups, is we are so excited to announce, drum roll please, Daryn. Okay, Daryn's got something going on there.
Yep.
We have finally launched our official YouTube channel.
Yeah!
That's right. You can go and subscribe right now, youtube.com/@shakenanddisturbed.
I'm doing it right now as we speak, John.
That's right. You better have already done it, actually. How dare you?
I know you're right.
Please do go and subscribe. And you're probably wondering what videos are over there on our YouTube page. Well, guess what? The full episodes of our Sunday episodes are up on YouTube. starting with episode 144 and all of the ones that have come after that. Um, full recording of our podcast are available now. They're there now as I try to get through this.
This is really like
It's
we
so
waited to the
exciting.
what, and the best part of this is we recorded it for like 45 minutes before this, not one motherfucking hiccup.
Not
That's
a
the best.
single hiccup. I don't know where this
That's
even came from.
That's the best part. We're going to be even doing more fun content on YouTube too. So it won't just be full episodes, maybe a
That's
roast of
right.
John, if you will. We really could
Something.
use your support by hitting that subscribe button. We really need you to subscribe. It just takes 1 second to hit that subscribe button. We're putting a lot of effort into our videos this year, and
That's
hitting
right.
that subscribe button just would mean a lot to us. It would really, really mean a lot. So send us a screenshot of your subscribe button, DM us on Patreon, DM us on Instagram, show us on Facebook, and we'll shout you out on a future episode too. So just DM us a
Yes.
cool screen grab of you subscribing because we really want a lot of subscribers, please.
Absolutely. So lots of Patreon perks was announcement number one. Announcement number two is our YouTube channel. Please share our videos and our podcasts wherever you can. We really rely on you guys to keep the show going. The YouTube channel will be another way for us to keep the show going. Essentially, the more radishes that we can grow from the garden, the better. And like I said, you guys make this show happen. So thank you
we
so
are a
much.
we are a garden.
We are a garden of radishes, whether we
We
like it
are
or
a
not.
we really are a garden. And I feel bad because your hiccups, because I know that they tend to hurt. Like
They don't
hiccups
really hurt.
eventually
You've
hurt
said
after a
that. Yeah.
while, though. Like sometimes it's like it's annoying because it doesn't
Yeah.
feel good. It's not like a
No, it's
sneeze
not
that like,
great. No.
okay, at least I can like relieve myself.
Yeah.
But it does, if you isolate the audio of your hiccup, it does kind of sound like my oop,
Oh, it
oop.
does?
Yeah, a little bit
Oh, it
like oop.
does. I just realized
Yes.
that as I played
So
yours.
every time you have a hiccup, just do my oop button.
I'm going to probably.
If you
It's
can time it. But
yeah.
yes, guys, just exciting stuff happening here. We're really excited to
Yes.
launch this. We have more exciting things in the works for later this year. But
Yes.
again, exciting is the key term. And it's just an exciting time to be a listener or now viewer of the show. And you
That's
get to
right.
see us every single week. So come on over to YouTube and hit subscribe. So I'm just excited about this announcement. You guys seeing us every single week.
Yes.
John, like, guys, I don't want to make the disclaimer that John every week will have hiccups.
I
That
think
is
they
like,
might
oh,
have
that's
just
like,
passed, thankfully.
okay, good. Because I feel like the listeners are really going to want to see that.
Yeah, I
And they
know.
want to see you suffer. So, like, I
Yeah.
can't promise that you're always going to be able to bring that. But I promise that John will always disappoint us in some way.
In some way.
And then we
Listen,
will point it out and make sure that he's just like,
I
he
could
feels bad
always
about it.
I could always sprinkle some water on me and make it look like I dribbled all over my whole face and shirt. That's always
I mean,
an available option.
it did dry. It did
It
dry, to be
did. That's
fair. Like
true. It's completely good now.
the dribble has
Okay.
dried. All right, well, let's get into this week's case because it's probably one that most people haven't heard of, and it's a little bit of a shorter case, but we wanted to bring it to your attention
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's rather contemporary because it's in like starts in the 80s.
That's
In
right.
1982, 30-year-old Jesse Perrin lived with his 22-year-old wife, Teresa, with their 3 children in Newport News, Virginia. Now, I looked this up,
Yeah, I
okay?
was going to
Because
say, before we
Newport
recorded,
News sounds like not a town.
random. Yeah.
It's like Truth and Consequences, Arizona, or whatever that is. So Newport News is an independent city in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Okay.
As of 2020, it is the population's over 180,000. It is the 5th most populous city in Virginia and the 140th most populous city in the United States, which doesn't feel that bad. That feels like up there to me. I mean,
I'm
that's a pretty big
surprised.
city.
I'm from Appalachia, as are well, not you, Darren, but you know, this side of the country, and I've never heard of Newport News. I don't know why, but okay.
No, like I wouldn't assume that that's a town, but
Yeah.
okay. So Jesse worked as a welder at the nearby Newport News shipyard and lived within walking distance of the naval base. In the small hours of September 14th, an intruder entered the Perrin home while the family slept. Teresa woke up to a loud noise and was
Ugh,
immediately met with the sight of the intruder hitting Jesse repeatedly with a crowbar, which seems, I feel like one
bloody,
knock with a crowbar.
disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, like what a way. Now, the attacker pulled Teresa out of her bed. Once she was on the floor, he pinned her legs down with his own and continued bludgeoning Jesse until he lost consciousness.
Mm.
Now, here's what's interesting. The attacker then spoke to Teresa, telling her that he had no intention of killing her husband, but only wanted to knock him out. And I feel like if that were the
Oh,
case, why not like And I get crowbars like cheap and probably everyone has one, but like why not like chloroform him or something, or like just make him pass out or like drug him?
Right.
Hitting someone with a crowbar, why do you repeatedly need to hit someone with a crowbar? I feel like once and they're probably knocked out. You hit them square in the head, wouldn't
And pr-
that knock
and
you
beyond
out?
yeah, and beyond knocked out, you're probably very seriously injured on your way to death with a crowbar to the head.
I
I
yeah,
mean,
that's what
one
I don't get.
yeah, one of the things I feel like we've talked about a lot in the show is that killers and attempted killers are usually the dumbest people in the show, in the episode, you know what I mean? This might be one of those cases.
This might be that. Okay, well then he then advised her that unless she did as he said, he'd get quote unquote her three sleeping children next, which that's terrifying. I think
I
anyone
mean,
would do anything to protect their kids. So it's not like you can really fight back, especially when you have children there. Like you really have to succumb and do what they say because the risk would be way too great.
I have to be honest, when we were discussing this a little bit before we started recording and when I was kind of skimming through the notes prior to recording, I saw these details and I just kind of pictured myself in a way because my mom was a single mother of 3
Oh, yeah.
and the
Wow.
idea of her having to defend herself, in a situation like this or the kids get it. I mean, it's just it literally just gave me chills. Like it's just so upsetting and horrible.
This actually happened to a housewife on Bravo,
Oh
Daryn.
my
She got
god.
robbed. Beverly Hills
Really?
housewife. She got robbed. And her kids were in the house, and they,
My god.
put her at gunpoint and stole
Wow.
shit. And I think obviously all she's thinking about is her kids.
Yeah,
And
see,
so you're
making sure
just
no one dies.
yeah, so just a scary situation. Even
Yeah.
if you didn't have kids, it's scary. But
Yeah, for
the
sure.
intruder then undressed Teresa and
Mm.
repeatedly raped, sodomized her. Throughout her entire ordeal, Teresa was able to hear Jesse's dying moans and gasps for breath.
Ugh,
I
hate that.
can't. I hate that. Uh,
I mean,
how annoying.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, it's
Terrible.
terrible. Now, during the attack, the assailant bit Teresa's leg so
Ugh.
hard that he left numerous bite marks, which feels cannibalistic to me. I mean, like biting a leg feels odd
You
to
don't hear
me.
about a lot of attempted killers biting too often, especially
Now,
not many times in legs.
well, yeah, because doesn't it leave like could leave DNA or
Well,
something?
again, a dumbass is amongst
Yeah,
us.
well, here's what's even worse. When he was finished with everything, the man took $14 in cash from Teresa's purse and fled. So
Ugh.
to me, that's not so much about a robbery. It's more so about either revenge or
Yeah,
some sort of sexual predatory thing.
something else is definitely going on here. And we'll get to all those details, but you do have to wonder how he got in and what the circumstances were there as well. Well, by the time Teresa was able to safely call for help, Jesse had succumbed to his wounds. He was dead before help could even arrive. Once
Ugh.
she received medical treatment of her own, Teresa did all she could to help police find the assailant who had killed her husband. Part of this process involved working with a sketch artist and giving detectives a timeline of the days leading up to her attack. Speaking of sketch artists, with all of the different AI tools that we have now, I wonder if sketch artistry is going to go away, if we can describe things and it'll create an AI composite of what the person could look like. They
I would
probably
think it
already
would
do
probably,
that.
they must, because I would feel like you would give a better
Yeah.
I think it would be better than like a sketch artist of some sort. I mean,
Yeah.
even just like typing something into Chat GPT will give you
That's what I mean. Yeah.
a way more detailed description. So in a way, like I do hope that not necessarily for people who lose their jobs, but just in the sense of like, yeah, let's get more accurate with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, part of this process involved, like I said, working with that sketch artist. Although she wasn't able to be very detailed, Teresa told the sketch artist that her attacker's approximate height, excuse me, told the sketch artist her attacker's approximate height and build, noting that he was wearing what appeared to be a sailor's uniform with a logo that looked like three nested V shapes.
That's interesting.
This is
I
sounding
also
military-esque. Yeah.
I wanted to say to you that I was reading a book. I mentioned actually this author before, Mary Roach. I was reading the book about like what happens to your
Yes.
body, like what happens to your body when you die.
Yeah.
Her other book that I'm reading, which was called 6 Feet Over, was kind of like tackling the afterlife and what happens. But
Mhm.
in this book, they were talking about studies that, and I'm blanking on the percentages, and I should have written it down. But essentially, like when you were being attacked, like let's say you're being held up at gunpoint, most people can remember the gun way more than they can ever recognize the person.
That makes
So they tend
sense.
to recognize the instrument that they're using as opposed to the person. So just a good sort of note. Hopefully this never happens
Yeah,
to you, but to give as many details as possible, a
for sure.
tattoo, a symbol or something, because obviously you're so focused on the barrel of the gun.
Yeah.
You're not focused on like, I can't even name what you wore last week. I
No,
couldn't,
not at all.
so it's just interesting what the things that we remember.
Yeah, and it's so funny. All those years that we've done Crime Con and just talked to people at our live shows and things like that, the conversation about why we listen to true crime podcasts and watch true crime television, a lot of times people are like, it's so I know what to do if I'm ever in that situation. And I'm
Or at
like,
least, yeah, give
wow.
yourself a better chance. Yeah.
Chance, yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking about Dirty John when we heard Tara's description of like how she went around, she watched The Walking Dead, I think was her reference on how to kill somebody. So it's interesting how media persuades people like that.
Well,
In this way,
Ta-
positively.
I think about the movie Taken a lot, where
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, you're gonna get taken.
Right.
Start yelling out any detail you see, tattoos, moles, height,
Oh
hair
yeah, yeah.
color. And I always think of that. Just, I mean, it's a good movie. It's terrifying. And, the
No, yeah.
likelihood of that happening is very, very slim. But I do think it's actually a really good lesson,
Yeah, for sure.
you know?
Well, so Teresa told police that the day before her attack, she'd taken her kids to the pool. And as she was heading home towards the end of the day, she happened to drive by a hitchhiker who yelled and swore at her.
Hmm.
Like her attacker, the hitchhiker had been dressed in a Navy uniform. Later that day, around 6 in the evening, Teresa thought she saw a man spying on her through the backyard fence, although she admitted she couldn't tell exactly what the man was doing, nor even if it was the same man from the pool. That is
I
so
remember
creepy.
they live next to the naval base. They
That's
live right
right.
by the
It's
naval base.
nearby.
So it would be kind of hard. People in uniform, I mean, it's really hard to kind of tell them apart. So
Right.
this does make sense. But at least she could give that detail.
Yeah, and I'm just like imagining like looking out and seeing a fence and like seeing a guy kind of be creepy over there. I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell is going on here? Now, she did tell investigators that she heard her attacker speak and that his voice sounded extremely similar to the hitchhiker from earlier that day. With a distinctive naval uniform as their blue as their best clue, not Blue's Clue, just so we're clear. Police paid a visit to the shipyard where a security guard named Donald Wade told them about a sailor he'd seen entering the gate at around 2:30 a.m. on September 14th. The sailor had what appeared to be blood spatter on his uniform. Can we see where this is going, you guys? Okay.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, though, Donald wasn't able to remember much about the sailor and agreed to undergo hypnosis because they used to do this all the time in the hopes of recalling more details. By the way, Magic is meowing and being annoying behind me if you can hear
That's impossible.
him.
Just
Just so you know.
stating
Yeah.
scientifically, that's impossible.
Where do you
But
stand on hypnosis, by the way,
um,
for this purpose?
I don't really stand on in the court of law just because I don't, and I could be wrong about that. Like, it'd be interesting to talk to a lawyer and how those things sort of get adjudicated in court. Like, because if you're a lawyer, obviously you want to bring
Yeah.
anything to the table. I definitely think it has some merit in terms of it's not. I don't think it's all hocus pocus. Like, I think there are benefits that people do repress memories. I think there is a way to bring it out. I certainly think that. But I think in terms of like evidence, it's kind of like
Yeah.
eyewitness testimony, and that can be really bad. And
And I
things can
don't,
really influence it, you know? And it's like,
yeah.
didn't you see the man in the yellow jacket? You didn't see the man in the yellow jacket, the tall man in the yellow jacket.
Suddenly
And
you're
if
like,
you're
oh, yeah,
being
that
forced,
guy.
you're like, oh, yeah, the man in the yellow jacket, where it's like you had absolutely no image of that. Like, I do think that you can
Right.
be manipulated and kind of coerced into having that. But I also
Yeah.
think there are pure memories. So, like, I'm not sold on it. It would have to just be evidence in court that would have to absolutely be supported by a million other things. I would never, as a juror, I wouldn't just rely on that
Me either.
to decide a case.
Me
That's how I.
either. No, that makes sense. Me either. And I will also add polygraph tests to that list. I mean, they're just not
Right.
reliable, especially in a murder case where you don't want to get any part of this even remotely wrong. I mean, you don't in any
Exactly.
case, but
But like,
in a
how do you
murder
prove that?
case,
Right.
yeah, totally.
So parts of Donald's story changed after the hypnosis
Hmm.
session. He now believed he'd seen the sailor at around 5 a.m. instead of 2:30, which is a pretty big discrepancy.
That is,
And
yeah.
this was more consistent with the timeline of the attack.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, but we don't know if he knew that information
Hmm.
going
That's what I
in,
mean. Yeah.
So police also hypnotized Teresa, and after the session, she provided another specific detail. Her attacker's uniform had 3 upside down V's on his uniform sleeve. We've seen that before. I've seen it.
Yep. It's
Kind of looks like
military,
epaulets,
naval, and
but it kind of
and
also looks like epithets,
yeah,
epaulets in the like in the boating industry. But
yeah.
they're kind of backwards.
Oh,
So posted
somebody's girlfriend is a below deck producer.
your girlfriend's that? Interesting. No,
Not mine.
post hypnosis. She also admitted to police that she quote unquote associated the hitchhiker from earlier in the day with her attacker. They did not necessarily sound the same. And this is my point about eyewitness testimony
Yeah.
really fucking up cases, because
Well,
like, people are always like, if you ask me a question, I'll be like, oh yeah, like maybe I know that person. Like, yes, like so much of that is our lives and conversations, let alone to be evidence for a case just doesn't seem open and shut.
I agree. And, the fact that she was saying that, oh, yeah, the attacker sounded just like the hitchhiker. It's like, if you're driving by a hitchhiker, are you really able to determine that conclusively if you're just driving by? I mean, again, she's been traumatized. Obviously, things are
Right.
horrible. I'm
Raped,
not trying to,
sodomized,
yeah,
like,
like I
my
don't want to
God.
take away from that. But, so whenever that we were going through that research, I was like, I'm going to make a little note of that information.
Well, investigators then brought sniffer dogs into the Haran home. Now, the dogs led police from the house through the shipyard gate and right to a ship called the Carl Vincent, which contained a crew of over 1,300 sailors. This is where
Mm,
detectives began their search for possible suspects. Over the course of 4 months, police took the dental impressions of hundreds of crew members before the ship set sail in December. Now, remember, her attacker bit her several times on the leg.
right.
Again, I don't really know how great dental samples are in terms of like comparing teeth marks either. I feel like
I
that's kind of
feel
a
like
debunked thing,
Yeah, I
but
was gonna say, I feel like we've talked about this on the show, and I want to say with some expert at some point in our careers, Darren. My God, we've been doing this for so long now, I can't even keep it all straight. But I want to say people were debunking that, trying to match dental records to bite marks almost is never reliable.
right, dental records are important for identification of a person,
Yeah,
but not necessarily comparing bite
bite
marks. I feel
marks.
like
Yeah.
that doesn't really work. Now, one of the many, many crew members ruled out was 26-year-old Keith Harward, who had provided a sample of his bite marks. Now, these had been examined, ruled out by a dental expert with the medical examiner. By the time the ship left port in December of 1982, police didn't have any suspects. And a few months later, in March of 1983, Keith was discharged from the Navy.
Oh,
Around this
interesting.
time, he was also accused of assaulting his girlfriend during a fight. She claimed that he'd bitten her during the assault.
Now we're getting somewhere potentially, right?
Well, now it's a little bit of like my ears are perked, but this
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything. A lot of people bite, although, like, that seems crazy.
It does, but also that the dog did sort of trigger to this specific ship. I mean, listen, the evidence is mounting. No one's guilty yet, but
Right.
okay.
When police were made aware of the allegations against Keith, they asked that he submit another dental cast for examination. Keith did so, which is a good sign, I think, if they're
Yeah,
willing to
he's
do that.
cooperating. Yeah.
This time, the dental cast was sent to Dr. Lowell Levine, a world renowned specialist in forensic bite mark analyst who has worked on extremely high profile cases, including the trials of Ted Bundy, Joseph Mengele, and the investigation into JFK's assassination. So we're talking big PR cases. I mean, this guy, for what it's worth, has to be, or fingers crossed, you'd hope he'd be legitimate if he's working on these huge cases.
Well,
Now,
legitimate enough for what was this, the 80s? You know what I mean?
right,
Anything
of
kind of was
course.
going still at this point in time.
Well, after analyzing the cast, Levine found that Keith's bite marks matched those left on Teresa's legs during her attack. Police then brought a photo lineup to the security guard, Donald Wade, who picked Keith out as the blood spattered sailor he'd seen on the morning of September 14th.
Hmm.
Now, the fact that this was done, I just want to note that after he'd been placed under
Yes.
hypnosis is super relevant. They should have done this beforehand. Forensic hypnosis is now known to be highly unreliable at
Yeah.
best. So the fact that this happened afterwards is just not a good thing, I think, because he is predisposed to the correct information and you want him to be tabula rasa, blank slate, just from
Sure.
what he can kind of recall. So that's really important to note here.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, Darren put it out perfectly, but I think the fact that he's also cooperating so much, I don't know. Let's see what happens here. But on
Yeah.
May 16th, Keith was arrested and charged with murder, which is, of course, a capital offense in Virginia, charged with rape, robbery, and burglary as well. Now, Keith's trial began in October, at which time Dr. Levine was presented as a bite mark expert. He told the jury his findings that the defendant was likely the person who made the impressions on Teresa's flesh on the evening of her attack. A second forensic dental expert, Alvin Kagi, was also brought in to testify, and he too claimed that the bite marks matched. Now, Donald Wade was also brought in to confirm that Keith was the blood spattered sailor that he'd seen around 5 a.m. the morning of the attack. Teresa, however, was unable to identify Keith as her attacker in court.
Hmm.
The prosecution failed to disclose to the jury that Donald and Teresa had undergone hypnosis to enhance their recollection.
Which is sus, because if you're the prosecution and you're failing to disclose to the jury basic things, that says that that's not a reliable thing to me.
Yeah.
Like that's not something trustworthy. And you need to give your otherwise, if the prosecution has the hard, has kind of a hard job because they have to prove guilt, right? So you want to throw everything that you possibly can. Otherwise, there's going to be a mistrial and that person's going to go away scot-free if, which
Yeah.
presumably could be a good thing, but it also could be a bad thing. So the fact that the prosecution isn't doing this is a huge red flag to me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The jury eventually, though, found Keith guilty of all charges, largely due to Dr. Levine's testimony and Donald's identification. Now, remember, Teresa wasn't able to identify him. Wouldn't that be
Which
the
was
most?
yes, but I sort of like again, I sort of understand if she's being raped, sodomized, like
Oh, of course. Yes,
what
definitely.
this kind of entails. Maybe she wouldn't have the best.
Judgment. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
definitely agree. Yeah, totally agree. I guess I was just saying based on what other stuff she was able to
Right,
describe, you would
exactly.
hope that
She
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 could.
saw the uniform, but that's about
Right,
it.
to whatever it was, yeah. Well, Keith was spared the death penalty but sentenced to life in prison. The defense appealed Keith's conviction and was granted a new trial, which began in March of 1986. Daryn, you were
I was so
almost
thought.
ready, almost ready.
I was almost cooking.
You
You
were
were 2 months.
baked.
You were a little baby too,
Yeah,
I thought.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Wait
yeah.
a minute, 86.
Were
You
you
were
born in
born in
86?
you were born yeah, but you were born in 87.
88, motherfucker.
Oh
I
my
swear to
god.
God.
Oh my god. I
Are we
keep
even friends?
forgetting. I
Guys,
always
on
think that I
video.
thought, okay, for a long time, I thought you were way younger than I was. Then I thought you were the same age or
I
same
mean,
year.
we are basically the
No,
same
I
age.
know, but I didn't get the exact year right. Give me a break.
Yeah. Oh
Anyway.
Lord. Never, never give you a break.
Anyway, I'm all over the place today. But anyway, once again, Dr. Levine provided testimony that there was a quote, very, 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 very high degree of probability that his teeth were the ones that maimed Teresa, further commenting that it was, quote, a practical impossibility that someone else would have all these characteristics, end quote. But remember, the characteristics he's saying aren't are bite marks. Like anyway.
Right. I agree.
In fact, throughout the entire legal process, 6 different forensic bite mark analysts were consulted, all of which advised that Keith's were a match to those left on Teresa. Well, yeah, if you're all learning the same science, that's, you're going to typically agree
Plus,
on
I
this
think
type of stuff.
there could have been motivation to want to find this guy guilty. They
That's what
want to get
I've had
her
that in
too.
my head too. I'm
We
glad
don't
you
know
said
the
that.
implicit or subconscious bias that are also playing into this. So
100%.
this time, Keith chose to testify as part of his defense, providing evidence to show the jury that at the time Teresa saw the man who may have been watching her through her backyard, he was actually at a class at the naval base, which doesn't mean he didn't kill her or rape her, but he certainly wasn't that guy who was looking through the thing.
Yeah, it's pretty solid alibi for that.
Keith had been caught with marijuana, Mary Jane, on the ship and had been required to take an alcohol and drug abuse training program.
Look how
In the
different we
80s,
are. Yeah.
yeah, like my God, nowadays, like, are you
Cut
kidding?
to
Now,
most states are legalized already.
yes, and people are actually understanding the benefits of mushrooms and
Yeah,
MDA,
that's right.
MDMA as a helpful form to help PTSD. So we've come a long way in that, and I give the
Absolutely.
country credit. Now, Keith also showed the jury that his uniform didn't contain any upside down
Oh,
V
right.
shapes.
Yeah.
Those were only worn by higher ranking petty officers.
Mm,
He's had an insignia of 3 slashes instead.
okay.
No, and that's really distinctive. Like, it's
For
not like, oh, we have
sure.
3 marks. It's like 3 upside down. That's like, that
Yeah,
detail.
you're
That's
you're definitely aware of what's happening with that?
Lastly, he demonstrated to the jury that at the time of the attack, he had worn a mustache, while Teresa and Donald had both stated that the man they'd seen was clean
Oh,
shaven.
well, come on now. Yeah.
You would know, trust me, you would know a mustache.
I would know a mustache. All
I
right.
would point a mustache for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, in spite of all of this, the jury found Keith guilty a second time on the charges of
Mm,
murder, rape, and burglary, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Now, he served 29 years of his sentence before his case was picked up by the Innocence Project in
interesting.
2015, which is what I thought this was going to go to. Their
Hmm.
first order of business was to conduct DNA testing on the blood and semen found at the crime scene. The testing completely excluded Keith
Yep.
as having provided the collected DNA, which
Good old Innocence Project.
that's what they do. That's
Yep.
what they do.
Because remember, this happened in the 80s where DNA couldn't really be determined and
It was just
tested in the
starting to
same way.
become a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Innocence Project also found that the crime lab that had originally analyzed the evidence had given false testimony, stating that
Ah,
Keith could not be conclusively eliminated as having provided the DNA found at the scene. The notes taken during testing provided enough data to exclude Keith, but were not disclosed as evidence to the defense at either trial, which is just an
which,
injustice beyond anything. What?
yeah, I mean, we call it the injustice system. And I do agree. Sometimes this is the best we have. Like for now, this is the best we got to kind of happen. But it's a problem when courts are incentivized to close cases
Yeah,
and
exactly.
not to get the truth.
The truth, right.
That's, I think, a problem. And
Yep.
that lies in the heart of a lot of this shit,
Well, the DNA matched a man named Jerry Crotty, another
obviously.
sailor who also worked on the Carl Vinson, the same ship where Keith worked at the time of the attack. Jerry had been in prison for numerous other crimes, including abduction, and had died in jail, excuse me, a decade earlier in 2006. The Innocence Project petitioned the court for Keith's release on the grounds that he was conclusively innocent. And on April 7th, 2016, the charges against him were dismissed. Keith spent a total of 33 years in prison
Wow.
before he finally regained his freedom. In 2017, Keith received a settlement. I think I'm remembering this case actually,
Yep.
of $1.6 million from the state of Virginia. I am remembering this actually
33
now.
years for $1.6 million. Now, granted,
Yeah.
this comes from the taxpayer, and I don't necessarily think it's the taxpayer's responsibility to cover the mistakes of just, frankly, negligence, as far as I'm concerned, court negligence. But I understand why it probably has to be us, but it's really unfortunate all around. That's why
Yeah.
they don't care because they aren't personally responsible. They'll
Yeah,
just give it
that's
to the
true. They're not
taxpayer to
held
pay.
accountable.
They
No.
don't care. It's not coming out of their paycheck.
I
It's
feel
coming
like
out of
if you're a
ours.
prosecutor and you're not getting this right to this extent, you should be prosecuted.
Well, part of me, I mean, this is why I don't believe in qualified immunity. Part of me also agrees with, like, we're so litigious in this country to sue,
Hmm.
and if we changed it to loser pays,
Right.
people would be less inclined to
Yeah.
fucking sue for every goddamn little thing.
Right.
But
Right.
instead, we're just going to tie you up in court cases. We're just going to make you spend your money, even if I don't think you have a case. Like, it's just going to cost you money, 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 as opposed to being like, no, you have to pay for my bills if I've
Right.
proven, like,
Yeah, I agree.
fuck you a little bit.
And in this situation, it's just so disgusting that people can just be like, oh, sorry that happened and move on. Well, according to the Innocence Project, Keith is at least the 25th person to be wrongfully indicted or convicted based on forensic bite mark evidence. Despite its prevalence in court over the last several decades, we now know that there is no scientific evidence that an individual can be identified through specific bite mark comparisons, which we were talking about at the top of the show, especially to the exclusion of all others. This information was publicized by the National Academy of Sciences report back in 2009. Although the bite mark forensics, as well as other junk science practices like hypnosis and lie detector tests, continue to be largely viewed as reliable by the layman public. The American Board of Forensic Odontology has even changed its guidelines. I'm not a science person, guys, okay?
Sometimes those like medical terms really
They're
tip,
tough.
I'm like
Yeah.
cardiologist. Like I'm like, oh, I'm like
Cardiologist?
cardiologist. Like it takes me a minute to be
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah. So I'm going to say it again like I know it. The
Yeah.
American Board of Forensic Odontology has even changed its guidelines to note that analysis can and should only be used as a guideline when examining evidence.
Right.
Right.
Eh,
States are slowly enacting their own
moratorium.
moratoriums on
Yeah.
forensic bite mark analysis in legal proceedings in the hopes of eliminating incorrect jury findings. Yeah, let's make sure we get that together, you guys.
Which is why the Innocence Project has to say that he's at
Yes.
least the 25th person, because I'm sure that there's countless others, and they think of the
Right.
backlog of people that they probably have to,
Oh, yeah.
even posthumously like declare
Yeah.
innocent of this. And he's in prison for decades. I just like, and if you look online at the Innocence Project, the man looks so sweet. He
Yeah. I
looks so
remember
sweet.
this. I remember this. It's
So
so
thank
tragic.
God for the Innocence
Tragic.
Project with things like this. That's why I love doing these little cases, just so you guys really are aware of the types of work that they're doing and the types of cases that they're taking
Yeah.
on. They don't take on cases unless there is good evidence to show that this person should
Yeah.
not be in jail, which is why we're actually going to have a lawyer come on in a future episode to talk about
Yeah.
why the Innocence Project is taking on Scott Peterson, because a lot of
Yeah.
you talked about that and we briefly discussed it, but I want to talk to a lawyer about what would be. So if you guys heard of this case, let us know. Obviously, at Carpe Daryn, at Jay Thrasher on Patreon, let us know, and Facebook, Shaken and Disturbed podcast fans.
And hell, why not go over to our YouTube channel and comment on there as well? Because
I
we're over
think you
there.
should, and I think you should subscribe, and I think you
There
should
you
write
go.
comments, good comments, please.
There you
YouTube
go.
comments tend to be so neg. I just can't
I know
stand it.
that's true. But I
So
think
neg.
I think our fans will be over there.
Yeah, they're the
Um,
nicest. Let's get to listener shout outs.
we love them. Yes, let's do that. We actually asked you guys last week or maybe even the week before what you thought that we were teasing in these weeks leading up to this announcement. Philip on Facebook said, "John and Darren monthly visits." Philip,
Ooh,
that's
Philip.
not listen, we will show up to your house, but you definitely are going to have to pay us quite a lot of money to be
Apparently,
traveling around.
if we get the Vision Pro like John reviewed last week, we can all just be living in our little virtual world
Listen,
together.
in all honesty, one of the coolest things about VR is like I want to
Is
do
that
something like that
right?
with
Is
our
that
podcast. Yes. So
totally?
I would love to be like an early adopter of that technology. Nonetheless, Mel on Facebook says, quote, a different new podcast session each week, specifically geared towards watching, reviewing true crime documentaries, such as the one about Natalia Grace. Not a bad idea. I mean, we typically just roll those right into our main feed because we love talking to you guys about them. But you guys were on to something. Darren, you had a couple here too from Patreon.
Yeah, no. And by the way, that's not a bad idea because we love it. But I just feel like we just continue it. If you guys have more stories and case suggestions and documentaries you want us to
That's
watch, we
right.
are down. I'll at least watch them. We're not sure about John.
Yeah,
Chris
Darren
on
definitely will.
Chris on Patreon said some sort of group chat board.
In a
Not
sense,
not incorrect, Krista.
comment section.
Paul on Patreon said, "Squeak! Can't wait for the announcement. I vote for more Magic Cam. This is
Now we're
something
on to something.
I'm not into, John."
By the way, I do want to just say, Darren, your audio cut out a second ago because your squeal was so high pitched
Oh, let me do it
that it
again.
didn't pick through. Yeah, it still didn't work. It's still too high. We're gonna work on that. We're gonna squee. There you go. There you go.
Squee.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Magic Cam. We did that on a live stream once. We can maybe make that happen. We can make that work in a YouTube video sometime
It's
down the
like,
road.
you know how you can go into a channel, like look at a zoo or something, and you see what like the baby otters are
Yes.
doing or the baby pandas?
Yeah,
He's
there you
not a
go.
panda. He's
Something
not a
like
panda.
that. All right.
Something like that.
Well, once again, please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/at shaken and disturbed. You have to
You got
put
to
that
put the
little at sign. Yeah.
Yes, put that ad in there.
For that to work. Or you can just
Such.
search.
Oh, we're just suching up in here.
This is not a good day. My brain is not working at
Have you ever
full
been on a such and
capacity.
rescue team?
Have you searched for us on YouTube? Anyway, search for us, or you can simply click the link in this week's show notes. Please hurry and get us to the end of this
While you're
episode.
suching,
Please.
join us every suchin single week live as we record these episodes by being a radish or a sussy radish on Patreon. That's
right.
patreon.com/shaken and disturbed.
That's also in our show notes. And I'm changing my sign off to have you
Such.
sooched for mushrooms? That's my sign off this week, Darren. What's yours?
I'm going to do mine saying, have you suched your pits? Especially if you have a penis.
Ew, so gross.
Suching your pits and peen.
All right.
Peenies.
Oh, dear. All right. We'll see you guys on next week's episode. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.